Hello, everybody. We are back. I can't believe we're headed towards episode 10 already, which just kind of blows my mind. But I'm really excited today. I have someone with me that I met, and I'll tell you the little story behind that. But Clarisa, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. I really am excited that you're here today. I was thinking about it. One of the things that I love is all of the different ways that people have come into my life and myself into theirs. And so when I have different guests on, I love to kind of share about, well, how I met this individual, or how some of them are ridiculously funny stories. Some of them are borderline inappropriate, whatever. But I'll say our story. I was invited, and now I'm embarrassed because, like I said, I can't remember for sure which incredible woman invited me. But it was essentially a women's only mixer. And it was members, I guess, that were hosting it were members of Executive Forum here in El Paso. But I don't remember I know Kelly Tomlin had talked to me about it. I know Cynthia Conroy had talked to me, Catherine Brennan, and Tracy Yellen. So I'm pretty sure it was Kelly that invited me to that specific one. But I met so many people that night that I had not met before. I loved the fact that there was also some younger generation people in the room. But that's where I met you. And it was via the conversation you and I started that night. And you listening to Kelly ramble about my book, which she bought. I love that you shared that, but that she bought it for basically everyone on her team. And I've actually connected with several people because of that. So fun.
That's awesome.
But when we met that night, you had mentioned just briefly that you had started, I say started, it's now been multiple years, which I love, an organization. But I want you to talk a little bit first kind of about your career path. I shouldn't even say career path. I should say your personal path too.
Sure.
Because your background I found fascinating. The Peace Corps portion, all of the things that kind of brought you to where you are today and what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I remember that evening, and it's interesting. So I've always been very community focused, and Kelly and I were serving on a advisory board together. So I knew her. And my aunt had brought me to meet some other women, and I love it because it's kind of like, I think community is essential, but people are self-selecting in these circumstances.
Sure.
And there were so many bright and motivated people there, and so it was a great catalyst to connect. So the group is the El Paso Feminist Media Group, but to your point about, history and how things are all kind of tied together, I went to the University of North Texas to study journalism, and I was, into media. I actually started studying design, but ended up with this journalism degree. And while I was in college, I was part of the FMLA. So I don't know if you've ever heard Feminist Majority Leadership Alliance, but these friends of mine, like my best friend was involved, and it was just a way to advocate and promote women's issues. And I don't know about you, but I have always just been really excited and very empowered about girls and women's issues, I guess my entire life. And one of the things we would do was help out with the vagina monologues. And I know your book, so it was cute. What we would do as fundraisers was make these little quote vaginas, and they were actually little pillows. They could be whatever.
Yeah.
And then during the show, there would be a woman dressed as a huge vagina.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just there was like all over the
Yeah.
place, like cushions and.
I joke that when I go on tour, I'm going to have a giant pink bus that says something about airing out your vagina on the side or something like that.
Yeah.
So
it was a good time. It was really fun. And so while I was in school, I realized something about myself was I guess I'm a good activator. I like to start things. So my first foray into community organizing was starting a bicycle group for women.
Okay.
And my friend came
Fernanda
up with...
is going to be so sad that she's not here because she's an avid cyclist.
We were... one day, my friend... we were cycling with these dudes, and it was kind of boring. And she's like, whatever, we're doing our own group, and it's going to be called Las Muñequitas de la Muerte. Okay, so if it means the little dolls of death.
Yeah.
And we were joking around at my apartment, we're going to wear pink and gold capes and we're going to go down. And it was like 5 of us. And she had this whole, fantasy built out. But I was the one that actually kind of made it happen. So we started this group and it grew to about 50 people. And I remember somebody said at the time, how do we use this momentum for good? Yeah. And so we ended up raising money for a women's shelter.
Wow.
And we did that through, some concerts and different types of fundraising. It was really special. And that was what sparked me into wanting to get involved in like nonprofits and social impact work. Mm-hmm. So shortly after college, I had decided to do the Peace Corps, and I used that experience plus a business I had started as kind of like my use cases to get into the Community Economic Development Program, and I ended up going to Costa Rica. And while I was there, I was supposed to do a lot of business empowerment, but I ended up doing a lot of women and children's work as well.
Got it. Okay.
I was inspired by a group in Austin called Girls Empowerment Network.
Okay.
And I had volunteered there briefly after college and before the Peace Corps. And the idea there is like, how do you help young women be unstoppable by providing efficacy through after school programming and a lot of their services? Because the idea is a lot of girls get stuck maybe around the age of 12 and they lose their spark. Yeah. Flash forward to my 30s, and I was in Austin again, and I had a mentor who was on the board of the Girls Empowerment Network.
Oh, wow.
And she asked me to help out with a volunteer event. I ended up being a part of a giving circle. They asked me if I could help lead this for younger women. And the idea was that they could feel and experience the programming we were giving to young girls and build this community. And they would pay $100 a year that would go back into charity. So we were raising, $20,000 a year or something and doing all this great programming. And what I realized was a lot of women still needed this self-efficacy. Yeah. The stuff that we taught women, young girls, how to deal with stress through breathing exercises or different self-care practices. So
the grown women needed too.
Yeah.
So, and I was going to say, and then I'll stop talking again, but one of the things that you said right now about realizing that these girls, the young girls, right, lose their spark. And I think that happens twice in life. And so I love that you mentioned that, because I think, I won't say it happens twice. I think there's the risk of it, right? So I think the young side of that is what you were referring to in that moment, where, they're 12 years old, they're 13 years old, they're starting to realize, what society is, and kind of some of the limitations or the labels or the things that, and it shouldn't be, but it is. But I think that's that piece. And then I think as we age, and whether that's, I like to say probably late 30s, maybe early 40s, because I think that's when it really hit me. I think it kind of happens again, because I think it happens when we're young and we kind of work through that, right? And we find our path or whatever that is. But then again, I think I don't want to say an awakening, because that sounds like a strong word, but I think there is almost an awakening that happens at some point. And I say in the book, people talk about a midlife crisis, and I don't think it's a midlife crisis. I think it's a midlife evolution that leads to, if you're lucky and you're blessed and you work through the tough stuff, a revolution. And I think it's the same thing.
I love that you bring this up, because as an aside, I remember seeing Gloria Steinem speak, which was incredible. And this young woman, she was like 12 years old, around that age, asked her, what advice can you give me? And it's just like, gives me goosebumps. And she said, just stay how you are. She's like, because a lot of women go through their lives and around their 40s, they rediscover that young girl in them, right? It's like you kind of emerge. And I think I've seen this with a lot of women where they have these insecurities, they're competitive, they body image, all these things. And then finally, it's funny because it's like the age where you stop kind of giving a fuck.
Yeah, quite literally.
You were like, I was so beautiful. I was so this and this and this, but you kind of realize it. And then you really start living your life.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of summation from her, because that's the reality of what, and I mean, I've said it 100 times. I absolutely positively experienced that. And I experienced it in every area of my life. So it was, and that's where I think it happens. Like I said, twice. I think the first time is we're told kind of what to expect. We start seeing it for what it might be, but you know, we're still learning and growing, and we still have that. You say spark, I say don't let somebody else stole your shine.
Yeah.
And then I think it happens again later when we realize, oh shit, I did it. I did let somebody dull my shine. My spark is gone. I don't believe in the work I'm doing anymore, or I'm in this role as a, you know, partner, spouse, whatever that is, that doesn't align. I wanted so desperately to be a mother, and I'm struggling because I'm working so damn hard that I'm missing out on that aspect. Like, I think there's so many areas that it happens in. For me, I joke that, you know, I do nothing half-assed. So if I was going to blow shit up, I was going to blow it all up. But I wanted to stop you on that piece because I think when you said it happens young, and it happens later. And I think the key is, and I love that she told the 12-year-old, don't lose yourself.
Right.
And I think, my God, if we could, and I've said now 1,000,000 times, if we could all live to about 50 as women, keep all that knowledge and then do it again. But then I guess that wouldn't be the point. I think you have to experience things to learn the lessons, but
100%.
I love that because it's so true. And the idea that we get lost, men don't do that. Women lose themselves in their roles. We forget. I totally lost Allie. I mean, I had no idea what I liked to do anymore, what I wanted to do with my life, where I wanted to go, who I wanted to be, and really finding, when you said an activator, my passion, or I feel like my purpose, is sharing stories with other women, whether it's the 12-year-olds, which I'm much better and more cautious about my language and what I share, or our age group, where it's women that are in the middle of it going, is it just me? Have I lost it? And really helping them realize, no, it's not just you. It's a real problem.
Right. And with the Girls Empowerment Network, the group we had, it was called Girl Advocacy League. So it was this network, but we exploded after the Trump election.
Okay.
Because women all of a sudden started getting on their computers or whatever and searching, how can I give back? How can I help? How can I help women? And so we got all these different women that were saying, I want to get involved. You know, and we're like, well, we have this group. Why don't you join us? Give us some money. And also learn about it and become ambassadors to the work that they're doing. And to me, personally, it's very sad because, like so many nonprofits, they have lost a lot of funding as well. And they were doing such great work. But, and really, at the end of the day, getting girls to perform better at school because of these practices that they were instilling in them. So it was super valuable, but it was also really cool to build these connections through that organization. They, at the same time, a friend of mine had an article club, like a book club. You know, you pick different topics, and it was.
Oh, that's a cool idea. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was really fun, and I met tons of people through it. I ended up inheriting the group, or restarting it, and had it for a few years, and we moved to El Paso.
Okay.
And I came to El Paso, and I didn't know that many people. In fact, I had met one friend at random, and I was looking for friendships and community here, and I asked her.
Well, and it's so hard to rebuild that as we're older, I think.
Yes.
Because, and you touched on that a little bit, but we are all in our own little, I don't want to say clique because we're too old for cliques, but they're still there. And so I think we're all in our own, or we're busy because this is our career path. And so we only know, for me, it was, if you're in healthcare, I know you. If you're not, I probably don't, because that's all I did.
Sure. And I mean, like, we don't have children. Some people connect through that.
Sure.
I was working remotely. I didn't even have an office to go to. But I asked this friend who I had just met, would you join if we did something like this article club? But I wanted to pick the word feminist because I figured this is going to be self-selecting and people will understand, and that will be the community I want to meet. So what if we put that out there? And she said, yeah, let's do it. And it was guerrilla style. I made flyers. I put them up around town.
Yeah.
I started Instagram and just started randomly following different people. I followed a lot of journalists because I figured they might be curious people. I
Sure.
come from that background. And my famous story, this was June 2021.
Okay.
And was it? No, 2022. I'm sorry.
Okay.
June 2022. And we were at Hope and Anchor, and me and the friend were waiting for people to come, and one woman kind of confused, looking for us, came out. And I remember being crestfallen because I thought more people would have showed up. And I was just like, this was kind of a bust. Thanks for joining me, though. And they said, no, don't worry. Like, we'll tell everybody. Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And sure enough,
You build it, they will come.
It grew from 5, 7, 12, 30, 50, over 100 people on our email list.
Yeah.
So now we have an active group, we have a little Signal group, and it's over 50 or 60 folks that are always sharing different things they're working on, asking different questions. We meet monthly. We do these field trips. But I noticed, again, kind of like in 2016, after the election, there was a flood of women that said, I want a space where I can feel safe, where I can have conversations, not feel judged. And I was just happy to provide that.
Sure.
I was just looking for friendships and something to do, but it took on a life of its own with, for many.
Well, and I think, you mentioned the election and the politics, and I feel like the majority, and this kind of falls in line with, when you said you made the decision to use the word feminist in the title of the group, because those are the people that you wanted to connect with.
Yeah.
And so, you and I have had this conversation, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit here because if me, maybe someone else, right? And so from my perspective, the word feminist, I didn't know a whole lot about it, to be perfectly honest. I knew, what makes the news or things like that. And I didn't have really a strong opinion one way or the other. I will say, I talk about my 5 pillars, and one of my 5 pillars is being a real woman who supports adamantly other real women. And so to me, feminist, I thought, I don't know. I mean, is feminist pro-women, anti-men? Because I don't know that I'm that. I know that I'm not. Could it be? And so I had this kind of internal thing with that. I was part of Leadership Women and their Leadership Texas cohort. We were best class ever, 2018.
Yeah.
But that was kind of, I won't say at the height of, but the Me Too movement was kind of loud and proud during that time. And so we, there were some members, and it was funny because, again, there's pockets, right? So there's this group in Leadership Women 2018 that was very loud and proud Me Too movement. And then there was another pocket in the same room of people that were loud and proud not. Yeah. And so and I say pocket, it was 1 or 2 that were loud and just a lot about it. Yeah. And everybody else was kind of in the middle. It wasn't we were pro or con one way or the other. It was that, how do we find, and I don't want to say the diluted path because that's not the way, but how do we find the path that fits us and fits our morals and fits our values and beliefs? And so, I had shared with you, and it's funny because the truth of the matter is, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and I will share with you, I had told Fernanda, I want to always find a way to be true to myself, right? Because I've lived the life where you wear the mask and you smile and nod and you're agreeable and you're a people pleaser and whatever. I've never been that on issues that resonated, I guess. So I would be on one side of the fence or the other based on whether or not it kind of fit me.
Right.
And what I'll say is I learned so much, and I was so glad. I told myself, I said, okay, well, going to this meeting, when you invited me, I was thrilled. I was very excited about doing it. I loved the icebreaker. We had so much fun. I enjoyed listening to each woman in the room kind of share a personal story about how a woman had positively impacted her trajectory in life. And a couple that shared, maybe not such a great experience. But I felt like in that room that day, I told myself, how do I stay true to me and my values? And have a positive interaction and a positive impact, and then jokingly not leave tarred and feathered, right? And it was fantastic. I loved it because I was able to find a way to do that from the perspective of, I found my definition of feminist.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was the, whatever the actual, definition of the word is, for me, it was the idea that I don't have to be anti anything to be pro something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I will say, like, I don't know where it comes from, the negative stigma of,
Me neither.
Of feminism.
Yeah.
And it kind of irks me when I hear friends that say, oh, I was explaining to her that the group is not like, and I was like, I don't even think you should explain, because simply by being a member and showing up, we have such a diverse array of different people that for me, it's all about empowerment. How are we empowering women? And, I often explain one of the ground rules when we get started is the idea here is not that we're going to convince all of us to agree on the same thing. Really. And, and because I think if you have that mindset, then people won't speak up because they feel afraid.
Of course
so
not.
I'm like, you have to have a level of respect. We all come from different backgrounds, different beliefs. So that's the approach I try to have is we are diverse, but we at our focal point, we care about women and girls' issues.
Yeah, period, end. And I think that's what made me fall in love with the group. And you said something along those lines at the beginning of the meeting. Like you kind of introduced, not everybody, but you kind of introduced the topic and shared a little bit about me. But I think that in my mind, and that's why I wanted to talk about it here, is that word, the word feminist, should not be a triggering word to anyone. Yeah. Because it's not about anything other than empowering girls and women. It's about lifting the issues that often don't get lifted or don't get spoken about. And I love the fact that you say we need to listen to all sides. I think that's something we've just we've lost as a world right now, is that people think if I believe this way or I, vote this way or then I can associate with. And it's absurd because, we're all humans. But I think it was learning about the fact that the word feminist, in my mind, had some of those connotations. And I loved the fact, I've done a lot of work on me, right? And so what is it that I need to change? What do I need to do better? And so when I really thought about it, I was like, what is it about that word? Like, why did it get under my skin? Or why did I think one way or the other? Sure. And so I was so grateful for the opportunity, and to get to know you a bit, and then the group, because it was so, and you said there were some moms they're stay-at-home moms and they are killing it. Best moms in the world. And then there's women there that are at the height of their career that are, killing it there. Like it's a little bit of everything, and culturally too, which I love that, which that's an El Paso
there's
thing.
never like a cookie cutter norm that we should aspire to, because we all have different desires as well.
I love that. I think I'm grateful for it. And like I said, I wanted to touch on it here. I say sometimes here it's crunchy. It's not always just the smiling, nodding stuff but again, if that word had a connotation with anybody listening, I wanted them to hear, my perspective on it and my perspective shift more than anything. I hope that makes sense.
Totally.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing.
So let's talk a little bit about, you talked about why you founded it. And now, it's already 2026, which is kind of mind blowing. But what are some of the more, what's coming up with the group? Sure. And in what way can people support it too?
Yeah. I appreciate you mentioning it, but it really is a word of mouth group because logistically it's hard to host so many people.
It is.
So people were really excited at the beginning of this month. We had our meeting and, people were joking. It's like, it feels like we're a witch's coven coming together again or something. But somebody said, I love that it is word of mouth. And I said, well, it would be amazing to facilitate a huge conversation with dozens of people, but it's hard because,
to do that.
Yeah, exactly. You lose, you don't want to be yelling from across the room. And I'm sure there's different ways to facilitate that. I hope other people are inspired to start their own
Yeah.
little groups. I so often hear so many women that say, I would love to start this film club about, XYZ. And I'm like, just do it. Right. But not
Yes.
that many people will. And
They're not all activators.
but and I'm sure there's a dozen different reasons. So I do think, like, if you think it's interesting, start it. We started doing little field trips, which is fun. There's one, I was telling you a little bit about it. Check it out on Instagram. There's a new group in town called the El Paso Feminist Birdwatch Group.
Got it.
And so it's a national group, and they're bringing a chapter here, and it's very interesting.
Great place to have a bird watching
Yeah,
chapter.
totally.
By the way. Yeah.
So we might collaborate with them, and then we're going to do a fundraiser actually in March for the Center Against Domestic Violence here in town. And I'm really excited to do that. It'll be a little different, but yeah, there's always all sorts of ideas. Like I was like, I want to read this book. Does anybody want to discuss it? Or, we'll have members say, hey, come over to my house. I'm going to do like a full moon ceremony. That happened recently, which was really cool. We went to the museum and they did a tour and showed us all the women created art. And we met one of the artists that happened to have an exhibit there. So yeah, I mean, it's all possible, but
One of the members, you did something with the symphony. I remember, right?
I have my own symphony group.
Okay.
I
love that.
It's a whole other story.
Okay.
I mean, it's not my group, but I started a group in town that supports the symphony for its young professionals, and we basically do after parties and different events around it.
How
So that's
cool.
pretty new, yeah. But where was I going with this?
Before I so rudely interrupted
No,
you.
no.
I'm terrible about it. I'm trying to get better.
I mean, yeah, I think it just gets down to like we're doing a walking tour of Juarez, which came out of a conversation. I knew what I was going to say. I recognize that being a leader, you can't do everything. And so kind of going back to the empowerment, I always make sure we have different hosts, we have different people leading conversations, because it would be impossible. This would be a full-time job if I was doing everything. I'm just trying to facilitate it, put it on the calendar. And I'm always thinking about who would be a great host. Like, for example, that time we had you come, what's a good topic? Who wants to, who would just be a good leader? And it's been really special seeing certain people take those leads and put their own twist on it. And it helps me out a ton because I don't have to do all the homework. Like I said, I'm just creating a space for people to continue that momentum.
Well, I love it. And I'm hoping that people, you touched on nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
And the fact, funding is becoming more and more challenging as time goes on.
Yes.
I've had on Nicole Schiff, who is a dear friend, and she's the executive director for Center of Hope. And they do, if you ask my son, she'll kill me. But if you ask my son, she runs the human trafficking business in El Paso. But she actually is the executive director for the anti-human trafficking, and they work with victims of human trafficking and child sexual exploitation.
Yeah, amazing.
And so that's kind of my chosen nonprofit that I speak about and work to support. And I've told her when I make my first $1 million, you get 10%. And she knows I mean it. But I think part of the role of groups like yours is lifting other women and girls up to a level that they feel comfortable and confident taking the charge, right? I mean, we're middle-aged-ish, or approaching that. I hope to be fully functional and kicking ass into my 90s, but who knows?
Totally.
And so what's the next generation?
Yeah.
And I think, that's the piece that I love about having different guests on the podcast, and talking to different folks that are so actively involved. And community is huge.
Totally. And when, I was involved with girls, I recognized all of this is serving me socially. I'm making new friends. I'm having new experiences, but I'm able to also give back. I was like, that's like 3 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah.
So I do feel the same way. We all get so busy, but what are little meaningful things that we can do that impact your community and create a ripple effect?
Well, and I think the impact piece, I talked a little bit about, so Zerelda Gallego I had on recently, and she just started, they asked me to come speak, so it'll be on my social media if you know anybody that wants to go. But they recently started, I think it's called El Paso Women's Networking Group or something like that. the thing that I loved about that is similar to your approach. It's anybody and everybody is welcome.
Yeah.
A lot of the networking, quote unquote, networking groups are very career driven. You know, and that's great. I mean, I'm a part of Executive Forum. I'm grateful for those connections.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really freaking amazing women in that group. But I think sometimes that, you know, that membership only type setting, leaves a whole lot of people out that bring a lot of value. And so
Totally.
I'm excited about going and speaking at her
Yeah.
event. She just launched it, and I love it because her story, she said, you know, we had the first meeting and she said, we're sitting there and it's like 10 minutes before it's going to start. And it's like me and my friend that started it and one person. But then another one showed, and then another one showed, and they posted and they did vision boards for that one.
Right.
And she said what was really cool, and this is the part that I took away from her story, was the fact that all of these different women from all different age groups, some were moms, some weren't, some were working, some weren't. I mean, there's across the board women representation. And everybody's vision board in the end was really looking for connection, meaning, you know, having a positive impact, finding some way to give back. And I think when we come back to the middle, and I talked about that a little bit, where I think kind of in the world today, the majority of folks that's what they're looking for.
Right.
We're looking for connection. We're looking for ways to improve the world in which we live.
Yeah.
To give back to our generation and the next.
Yeah.
To make the world, I mean, it sounds cliche, but really to make the world a better place. How do we do that?
Well, you know, it's interesting. So this might sound corny. I don't care. But I just did The Artist's Way recently. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
It's a book. Julia Cameron did the book. I did it with these friends. It's a 12-week course. And there are parts of it that like are overly religious for me, but but I think the big takeaway for me was you need to nurture your inner child, and you find out your most authentic self by doing that.
Amen.
And you open up your mind. And I realize, you know, when you're younger, you have all this freedom, but also you are so open to meeting different people and having different experiences and
open-minded,
trying different things, right? And we get into our routines a lot, but I think even a small change we can all do that doesn't cost any money is to take a pause and say yes and open yourself to different things, because even an introduction or meeting a new person can make a big impact.
It can shift everything.
Yeah. The example I have was during the holiday, I went back to my village in Costa Rica, and you know, I spent a lot of time on a lot of projects that didn't work. And, you know, you're wringing your hands over, like funding and trying to meet the right people. But it's connecting a need with an opportunity. And sometimes it's just making that small connection. One of my first projects that I spent very little time doing was starting a Boys and Girls Scouts group, GSC Scouts. And my Spanish was terrible at the time, but all I did was bring this guy in. He gave his spiel. We started a group. I walked away. Now the kids who first started are in this group. It's continued today.
Wow.
And I walked away from this conversation. Somebody had told me about it.
And so how many years was that?
So I started in 2008.
Yeah.
So it still continues. And this guy was saying, you know, not only did it help my son build his own self-esteem. He was so shy. He's like, I had never spoken in front of people, and I had all these amazing experiences, you know, visiting different parts of the country. And I walked away and I told my friend, that was the one project I spent the least amount of time on. And he said, sometimes it doesn't even matter. It was just that you planted a seed where, you know, there was fertile soil and it took off.
Yeah.
So I often think you could bring that home and say, hey, like, I see an opportunity to connect these two people, because where can I identify a need? And, you know, you never know. You never know how you're going to change somebody just by making that connection. So it's as simple as that.
I love that story. And I love the idea. I say a lot, the power of yes, right? So we talk a lot about learning boundaries and learning to say no. And there's a lot. In fact, I recorded something today on TikTok about boundaries. So big fan.
Yeah.
But we don't talk a lot about taking the risk or saying yes to an opportunity, saying yes. And you said it beautifully. The idea of, we get so in our comfort zone. We get so busy in life. it's really, I'm a homebody. Like if I don't have to put on makeup and a bra, I'm happy. And so making yourself go to different things and meeting different people. And you nailed it when you say you never know. And I think you never know how it's going to impact you, right? It can totally, that one meeting can change the trajectory of your life because this person knew that person and they thought you might, Kelly having me talking to you about my book, and then I get to come and meet you in the group and what, like, and the scale. But to go and do what you did in Costa Rica, and then all these years later, get to go back and see that. So, one, kudos to you and amazing because yes, don't do that. Don't shake it off because you did that.
Thank you.
And I mean, what a gift to yourself and your soul, right? But the fact that, and that says it all, that you didn't see it that way.
Right.
You looked at it as, look at what they took and continued and built and it's still going. And the lives that are being changed by that.
They tell you don't go in trying to, put your stake in the ground and say like, this is going to be my thing. But I think when I was being a volunteer and I was experiencing a lot of the work I was going through, I had to remind myself that I wasn't going to get a thank you for everything. Right. And I didn't need to get a thank you, but all I wanted was to be that person that those little kids remembered years later, like, she took us to the university and we got to try that thing. Throw things on the wall and see what sticks. But you'll never, I think if you're in it for the thank you, it's not going to be rewarding. And
it's not real.
Right. But for me, it was recognizing that good things take a long time. And I still have to remind myself about that all the time.
Well, I appreciate the reminder because there's times for me that I wonder, I'm doing all of this content and I'm doing a podcast and I wrote a book and I'm starting a YouTube show. And there's times I laugh that I'm like, are people like, what is this lady yapping about? Like, now what? But then I get a message here or there. Or I get, a feedback on a video or something. And it's like, and I said that, that I said when I decided to publish the book, like, if one woman feels less batshit crazy and alone after reading this, mission accomplished. And so I think the idea that change isn't instant, and when it's real and change is deep and the meaning is there, it can take forever. But at the end of the day, if it has a positive impact on someone, if it maybe changed their perception of something, I always say on the podcast now, if somebody listens to an episode and gets a nugget, I did my job. Like I'm thrilled when that happens. And I think, we got a few of them today. So I think, the power of yes is a big one. I think, the idea of it doesn't have to be huge. It can be that one little thing that you decide to do, that you decide to show up to a meeting, or you decide to volunteer with an organization, or, you attend something that maybe you wouldn't typically have attended. I think all of those things, they add up. And it's the culmination of those and what you give that makes a difference in the end. I think I ask every guest that comes on, now I've started that, about a belief or an idea or whatever that really kind of framed them. And so for you, I guess my question would be, what's one belief that you had to either overcome or let go of or whatever to become the Clarisa that you are today?
I had some time to think about this question. So, and I think when someone told me, at a critical point in my life, it was, I was making a lot of decisions about my career and relationships and where I was going to live. You don't always have to have your shit together. It's okay to let go. It's okay to cry. It's okay to ask for help. And I noticed that one cultural difference in Costa Rica is people ask a lot from other people. And that's how you build relationships. And, they would stop and have a cafecito and like chat about their problems for the day. It was very communal. And I think a lot of Americans feel like, I'm not going to ask for help. I got this. I can't show signs of weakness. I have to portray myself as being strong. And I guess I've just seen that from a lot of different people, but knowing that it's okay to,
Yeah.
you know, it's okay to throw your hands up in the air and be like, I don't have this.
Yeah.
I'm not okay. And, you know, to be vulnerable. It's like,
Yeah.
Brene Brown, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think once you can let that go and recognize, if I ask for help, it's not asking too much of someone. Like, that person will want to help, right?
Yeah.
So
I love that. I really do. And I think it'll resonate with a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I won't say women more than men, because, and I love the way that you said Americans, because I do think it is a cultural thing. We're bred to have it all together and have all the answers and not need anything from anyone ever. I've got this. And I certainly lived a lot of years of my life under that, and did definitely feel like if I ask, it's a weakness, or I'm a burden, or and then learning not to struggle so much with receiving.
Yeah.
And I think that was a challenge for me too. But the way that you worded that, it reminded me of a friend of mine told me, she said, I know you enjoy giving and lifting others up. Like, it brings you joy. And it does. I love nothing more than to see a team member of mine that I worked with. Like, to me, the job of a leader is to build other leaders.
Yeah.
Right? The job of a leader is not to build a team of minions that do whatever the leader says. Like, that's not leadership. That's management. But I got a note recently, and it was a tough conversation I had with this employee. And it, you know, it was before my last role. I was managing urgent care centers for the state of Texas, basically, for an organization. And he was a paramedic came in. And he was a go-getter. He was a really hard worker. He was a good paramedic. But he came in and he was upset because he didn't get the senior manager role. And so I took the time to have the conversation, and I remember it to this day. But I said, like, I get it. And I love the fact that you're a go-getter. And I was that person. I was the new nurse that was like, oh, I would love being a nurse recruiter. Yeah, I'd been a nurse for 5 minutes. Like, how was I going to go be a nurse recruiter? But I was young and, you know, maybe naive or inexperienced. And so when I looked at this kid, because he was a kid at the time, I thought, oh my God, it's me. And so how do I have this conversation in a way that doesn't negate everything he brings, right? And the amazing stuff. And so you never know how that hits on the receiving end. But I remember saying, like, you have the knowledge. Or you have the expertise. You need time to build the knowledge. And I said, and you need the meat. I said, you have the piece of paper, you have the degree that'll open the doors, but you need time to build the knowledge behind the expertise that you have. You need the meat. And I said, so, you know, I hope this doesn't, anyway, he reached out maybe a week ago on one of my reels. He posted it on Facebook and just said, you know, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm still a fan and I still follow you. And I'll never forget the day you taught me what I needed in the moment. And I think it's realizing that by asking for help or asking for guidance or raising your hand and saying, I don't got this. You know, I got fired a little over a year ago. I mean, talk about a whirlwind. I had to figure out, okay, who are my people? Who can help me? How am I going to survive this? But I think learning to let go of what we've been programmed to think about asking for help is huge.
I agree. You said something, a couple of things come to mind. One, I was kind of joking, or I was thinking about a former boss who was like, oh, to have the confidence of a white man. That's just like, I got this. And as women, we're like, you need to be prepared. You need to do your homework.
We won't apply for something unless we meet every single check mark.
But the other thing was saying, like, who are my people? And I've had a lot of conversations with friends recently about the importance of having relationships that hold a mirror to yourself, that are people that are able to call you out on things and people that can really give you true, honest feedback and advice. And even if it's just one person in your life that's like that, you know, how incredibly valuable it is to nurture those relationships because those people make you better people.
100%. We don't get better in the easy. We don't get better in when everything's flowing well and everything's going our way. We get better in the adversity. We learn and we grow in the turmoil sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the
Yes,
friends I talk about sitting in the shit or sitting in the mud. It's not about necessarily fixing it. It's those that are willing to give you their thoughts or say, hey, you probably didn't handle that so great, and let's figure out how to fix it. But it's the people that'll sit with you in the mud. But like you said, that'll also call you on your crap. That'll say, hey, Allie, like, I get that you're upset or whatever, but did you think about this?
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of going back to how we originally started, you were talking about an evolution in middle age. And I think what is beautiful about being older is you know yourself, and I'm speaking in a broad swath, but my hope for a lot of women is that, you get to a point, they say fuck it 40, right? But
Yeah.
You get to a point where you don't care about what other people think as much, so you can be your most authentic self. So you can show up for people and be the mirror and have these friendships that are meaningful and important and real, like you were saying. So yeah, it's unfortunate that we kind of have to go through this in our lives and weeding out certain people, just living it through it. But that's life, the ups and downs.
It is.
We got to do it. It's worth it.
And the superficiality falls away anyway. And I think the things that we worry about, I mean, I joke around about, I wouldn't have been caught dead in a swimsuit in public in my 30s. And now I'm like, I really don't give a shit.
Yeah.
If someone wants to judge my thighs or judge my whatever, that's on them, not on me.
Yeah.
I'm going to live my life.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same thing in relationships. The superficial relationships, I'm not interested in them anymore. If, I don't really have them anymore. You're either somebody that I admire and respect and trust, or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that very much comes with what I refer to as the midlife evolution. Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Truly, I'm so glad you were here. And I'm glad you didn't bring my feminist pen, because that brings me to another meeting. And I will absolutely be there, but I can't thank you enough.
This was so fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh no, and the more conversations like this that people can have, the better our opportunity is to make significant change, have an impact. So there's the goal.
Thanks, Allie.
No, thank you, Clarisa. Thank you so
All right.
much for being on. All right, everybody, we will be back in a week or so with the next episode. And until then, be safe. Take care.